The pieces before me on this table would represent food preparation in the biblical period. The oldest object probably on the table is our stone quern. It's a stone that's called a saddle quern. It would have been held in the ground, and then the mullet or the rubbing stone is used to grind the grain. And so every household would have had this in terms of preparing the wheat or grain or cereal. Before the Bronze and Iron period, we have what's called the Chalcolithic, and I imagine that even every household would have had some kind of storage container for the vegetables, the meat, or the cereal that would have been collected. This vessel is at least 6,000 years old, but also demonstrates the fact that aesthetics was part of the decoration, that these vessels will be sometimes painted, sometimes inscribed, and certainly look at the decorative arrangement on a simple strainer from antiquity, as vessels were used to strain soups and stews into a bowl or container. These strainers illustrate from the Iron Age what would have been used. And this is a very unique or creative piece. It has a handle and then the spout where the liquid would come out ultimately. I've also selected a kind of interesting piece in our collection. We're uncertain as to exactly what the use of this is. When I look at it, I'm calling it a salt shaker. It's 506 grams or 1 pound, 3 ounces. It's 13 centimeters long and 8 centimeters high. I suspect that some kind of spice or salt might have been used to slip in there, and this is something that could be shaked out. That's just one possibility. Another suggestion is it could be a container for seeds, for the sowing of the grain or flowers for another season. So it's an interesting piece. It's very early. You can see it has clay that has some imperfections. The handles are very primitive. I imagine that this is something that would be as early as the Chalcolithic period. So here's food preparation. Also, we don't find silverware, knives, forks, spoons, but we do find blades that have been shaped so that cutting of meat and vegetables would be possible, and even smaller pieces of flint as well. What did they cook in? This whole mouth jar from the late Iron Age illustrates that this vessel has actually been on a fire. And we can imagine that maybe it held the stew that might have been being prepared. I'm not sure what the meal would have been that day, but you can use your imagination. On this table also are examples of vessels that would have held liquid. In any kitchen you would need, obviously, liquids, in addition to the meats and the vegetables that would have been used. And these two vessels represent what would have been in an Iron Age kitchen of approximately the time of Nehemiah and that period. And our last vessel, which we've talked about before, is an interesting piece that domestically people needed to go to the well to collect water. And so the water vessels would be rather large, almost cumbersome. But this one has the possibility of having a trumpet-based rest where the dipper juglet bringing out the liquid can rest as the object would be used to fill a dish or bowl. One of our students from the seminary, who has gone on to do a PhD, did her dissertation in foods of the ancient world. And it's a textbook that's used widely. So we know a great deal about foods because sometimes charred remains of what was in these bowls is preserved, and we have evidence not only of the foods but also of the trees and the shrubbery and other things that were grown to be used as grain.